But like I said, it gives us great pleasure to host this meeting again. This is now 4 years in a row. And one of the reasons why it also gives us much pleasure is because apart from the changes in telecommunications that has taken place in Fiji and communications overall in Fiji, we very much believe that communications, telecommunications should be more of a regional effort than anything else. The reality of the matter is, apart from the Asian countries, with the countries in the Pacific, the economies of scale are very, very small. You have 10 million mobile phone connections in a country like India in a month. We don't even have 10 million people. That's the reality. If it was not for Papua New Guinea, our population base would be only about 3 million, if that. So in terms of our ability to attract investment, in terms of our ability to keep up with technology, in terms of our ability to ensure that there is continued investment and uptake of technology, it is an enormous challenge. And how we overcome those challenges depends on how best we can cooperate with each other. So this is why when we were given the opportunity to host these meetings, we had very readily agreed to that. Fiji, of course, provides a very good location to get everybody in the Pacific together. I'd like to thank the various organizations that have contributed towards our ability to host this in Fiji. So, and we'd love to continue to host this. I'd like to very briefly highlight to you, ladies and gentlemen, some of the key points that we ourselves are concerned about in Fiji as a country, as a nation, and in particular through the Department of Communications. Of course, the key issue is, like I highlighted, is that with the uptake of technology, we always have to be very, very mindful that we do not leave people out in the periphery. In particular, in a country like Fiji and like many of the other Pacific Island countries, that are spread over vast expanses of the ocean, even within a country. So you can actually have those in the towns and cities who may get 4G, who may get access to the smartphones, but those in the outer islands, those in the rural areas, in fact, can get marginalized. So in fact, whilst the general theory is that with technology we bridge the gap or the divide between the rich and the poor and the haves and the have-nots, if we are not careful, that divide in fact can widen even more, because it will be only the elites who can get access to it. So this is precisely why, for example, we very much focus on mobile broadband. We have now for the first time had a public auction of our 4G spectrum, which happened for the first time last year. We've liberalized the telecommunications industry in Fiji. So now, when the peak rate just a few years ago was about 99 cents a unit, today a peak rate for voice call is about 24 cents a unit. Enormous changes. The youth of today do not know what the rates were. They now can text message, for a few cents, whereas before it was 50 cents or $1, whatever the rates were. So we are very much focused on the fact that we need to be able to ensure that our policies and our regulations and the entire infrastructure focus towards telecommunications must include those in the periphery. And this is why, for example, over the past, in particular 18 months or so, we have set up various telecenters around Fiji. We now have about 75,000 more new users of internet in Fiji. And primarily this has been driven by the fact that we have gone to various schools and said to them, we'll give you the computers, we'll give you free access to internet, we'll give you photocopiers, scanners, webcams and what have you, as long as your students can use it, as long as after hours you allow the adults living in that area to be able to access those telecenters. And in fact, in some of the places, we're actually paying for the security guards, because the school said, what if somebody comes along after hours and wants to run away with a computer? So we're actually providing that, simply for the reason because we want everybody to get an uptake of the technology. And in this way, we are empowering people, we're bringing people into the center as opposed to leaving them on the periphery. And I think that's very, very important for all of us to understand that. We have recently also, for example, as you know, well, not recently, around about in 2012 or end of 2011, launched our national broadband policy that essentially provides the roadmap in terms of what we're going to do in the next few years. Actually, it was quite funny because, and I have to say this, just a couple of weeks ago, or 1 week ago, I heard one of the politicians from, of course, the opposition parties saying, when we get elected, we'll put in place a national broadband policy. They forgot to check the facts. We actually had launched one in 2011. The point, though, is, ladies and gentlemen, is that we need to have a roadmap in terms of whether it's broadband policy, whether it's overall policy and regulations on spectrum allocation. It needs to have a long-term view. This is why we have already made a decision to launch digital television. Of course, that will free up some of the space that needs to be available. And one of the things we found, of course, is that spectrum, by many of the policymakers previously, was not seen as what we call limited real estate. It is limited real estate. And we have to view spectrum in that manner. There needs to be a major overhaul in some of the countries where people have not done so, where we have done so recently. We need to have a major overhaul. So in terms of the allocation, we have a planned approach. And not just a planned approach, but also a very transparent approach. We found, for example, it is a reality. You pick up newspapers, by some of the Asian countries we found, there's corruption in terms of allocation of spectrum. So the processes need to be transparent. If the processes are transparent, if the laws are quite transparent, then you'll find that you'll be able to attract more investment quite readily. And I think that is where the ball game is. In particular for smaller countries like ours, where people don't necessarily are in a rush to come to your country, we need to be able to create a level playing field, a transparent playing field, where people feel confident, investors feel confident. And again, it requires being innovative. For example, we've now started leasing out spectrum as opposed to people having proprietorship over it. And so we have a planned approach to that. Linked into that, we have two major policies that we have already launched, and in fact some of them will have some practical implementation on the ground in the next few weeks or next couple of months. One is the notion of infrastructure sharing. To give you an example, we have two mobile phone companies at the moment. Now everybody goes up and sets up their own towers. Similarly, we have three free-to-air television stations. We have, of course, the landline companies, TFL. We have some other providers that may want to set up towers. Everybody sets up their own little tower. Now, if you had infrastructure sharing, which probably should have been done years ago, you'd find that the initial investment by the investor needs to be much lower, or can be much lower. Therefore, it has a positive spin-off effect on the level and the pricing of the services available to members of the public. So we have now come in through the Universal Service Access Program and said that we will actually now subsidize some of the tower infrastructure. Now, when we did make that initial announcement, we in fact had not thought about, well, hang on, there's the ability to set up only one tower where everybody can put up their own little dishes. So rather than having 5 towers on one hill. And of course, as you know, in the Pacific, hills are a limited resource in itself. So everybody's scrambling for that one hill. So I think what we have done now is in a way rationalizing those costs, or helping the investors rationalize those costs. And that's what you'll see come to the fore in the recent times. We've also recently introduced a new law where we have said that, for example, free-to-air television must ensure that events of designated importance must be shown by all free-to-air television. So whether it's Parliament question time, whether it's a state funeral, whether it's various sporting events, everybody must be able to show those programs on television. So for example, FIFA World Cup, which is currently being shown, was the exclusive domain of one particular company. So now through the new laws that are in place, they have to share that. Of course, they'll be paid for that. They'll be compensated for the sharing of that. So henceforth, going forward from in Fiji now, you will have all the free-to-air television stations bid, for example, together for the World Cup rugby, as opposed to one television getting the exclusive rights over it. So in this way, you get a buy-in of people into the technological space, and people feel that they're very much part and parcel of it. Similarly, we have also at the same time introduced and strengthened our regulations through Telecommunication Authority of Fiji and of course through the Ministry of Communications. We are working very much together with the private sector to ensure that level of confidence is there. We have zero rated duty on all smartphones in Fiji, because we want to tell the public of Fiji, we want to tell all Fijians that a mobile phone device is not just only for voice, it's also for data, it's also for other uses. So we've now zero rated duty on smartphones, and we've seen a huge uptake of that. Similarly, we have now seen a development of various applications even by local companies, because they know a lot more people are going to use it. So we've got, for example, one of the companies in Suva has developed a number of applications which are very much useful. We now have, for example, political parties reaching out to the masses through mobile phones, through text messaging, but also through various applications that have been developed now. So it brings people into the fore, and our view is essentially that telecommunications and the way we manage it must be at the end of the day there for the empowerment of the ordinary people. There is no point getting smartphones out there if people don't have running water, if they don't have electricity, if they don't have roads. Of course you need electricity to charge your phones. So these are, technology goes very much hand in hand with the uptake of basic infrastructure needs. So we now have, for example, fishermen who are on the outer islands. They're able to text beforehand and see what price they'll get in Nandi as opposed to the town down the road in Lautoka. So they know where to take their boats. So they miss out the middleman who takes the cream generally. So these are the sorts of applications that we are focused on. And I think with the kind of collaboration, we're very much open to collaboration. Recently we had our chairman of Commerce Commission visit one of the other Pacific Island countries, where the equivalent of the Commerce Commission wanted to discuss about the pricing regarding wholesaling and retailing, because obviously there needs to be some form of regulation. In particular, if you've got an incumbent and you have a new entrant coming into the market, how will we facilitate the new entrant coming to the market? These are the sorts of things that need to be discussed. And I'd like to round off there, and thank you everyone for your coming to Fiji. We're here to assist, and please, through the Ministry of Communications, those of the Pacific Island countries, if you want to share any knowledge with us, you want to take some of our knowledge, please, we're here to help you, because I think at the end of the day, it's for the benefit of all Pacific Islanders if we are able to cooperate and collaborate together, because at the end of the day, we all must be focused on the human beings that we are there to serve. So Vinaka Vakalevu, and yes, as Mr. Yamada said, please spend your dollars in Fiji as Minister for Tourism. We like that, but on a serious note, I hope you take the time out to enjoy our country and enjoy the much renowned Fijian hospitality. Vinaka, thank you.